occupation of Gaza, a move that the United States and others have warned against. Facing global criticism over the bloody military campaign in Gaza that has killed thousands of civilians, Israeli officials have turned to history in their defense, and the names of several infamous sites of death and destruction have been on their lips, including events dating from World War II to the post-9/11 wars against terrorism. The goal is to help justify a campaign against Hamas that is claiming thousands of Palestinian lives. Facing growing anger from their own people, Arab countries are intensifying their appeals to the United States to pressure Israel to implement an immediate ceasefire in Gaza or risk sabotaging the security of the entire Middle East. Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Egypt have all implored American officials, including Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, to get Israel to halt its military assault. And we know that after 4 weeks of terror and retaliation in Israel and Gaza and 20 months of war in the Ukraine, President Biden is confronting the limits of his leverage in the two international conflicts defining his presidency. For 10 days, Biden and his administration have been urging Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to allow for a humanitarian pause in the bombing, hoping that the $3.8 billion a year of American security assistance would carry with it enough influence over the Israelis' military tactics. Well, it has not. And Israel continues to use huge bombs to collapse Hamas's network of tunnels, even if they also collapse whole neighborhoods in Gaza. A looming rematch next year between President Biden and former President Trump has left voters deeply dissatisfied with their options, longing for alternatives and curious about independent candidates like Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Now, this is all according to a new poll of 6 battleground states by the New York Times and Siena College. Both Trump and Biden are viewed unfavorably by a majority of voters in these states. 1/5 of voters don't like either of them, and enthusiasm about the upcoming election is down sharply compared with the poll conducted before the 2020 contest. And today, an off-year election year with major stakes brought voters to the polls in several states. We are tracking states from Ohio to Virginia, and there are key races on the line for Democrats and Republicans. Competitive governors' contests in Kentucky and Mississippi, both deeply red states, will be closely watched tonight, and the results on contentious issues like abortion access, which is directly on the ballot in Ohio, are all likely to be dissected for hints about what's likely to happen in the presidential showdown of 2024. And the Supreme Court today appeared inclined to uphold a federal statute that forbids people who are subject of domestic violence restraining orders from possessing firearms. Justices on both sides of the court's ideological divide seem to think the Second Amendment does not keep legislatures from restricting firearm possession after some sort of court finding that a person is dangerous. And tomorrow night, 5 candidates will be on the stage at the 3rd GOP presidential debate in Miami. But North Dakota Governor Doug Burgum fell short after having made the first 2 Republican debates. Former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, Vivek Ramaswamy, and Senator Tim Scott of South Carolina all qualified. Now, of course, Donald Trump will not be on that debate stage tomorrow. He has some kind of counter rally that he has planned for tomorrow night. No surprise there. This is Areva Martin in real time, and I'm your host, Areva Martin. And this is your one-stop shop destination for today's trending news, expert analysis, and my unfiltered opinions. And in this hour, I am joined by 2 of my favorite contributors, Dr. Omekongo Dibinga. He is a senior professional lecturer at American University. And also in this hour, Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey is joining us. He is a KBLA national political affairs analyst, and he's host of A More Perfect Union, which you can check out every day at 1 p.m. PST right here on KBLA. And in hour two, since this is such a big election day, this is the hour where we dig deep, where we go behind the headlines and bring you those stories that people are talking about. And tonight, if you turn on your cable news station, if you pick up your cell phone and look at your social media feed, it's going to be about the election. These elections that are taking place in states all over the country. So many things are on the ballot in this off-year election. Everything from abortion rights, Medicaid, marijuana, crime, and cleanliness. Folks in states from New York, Ohio, Virginia, even states in the South like Mississippi are going to be voting tonight. And in this hour, I'm going to bring you two political strategists that are going to help us make sense about what likely is to be the outcome, because some polls have already closed. Others remain open at this hour. But these strategists are going to give us some insights into what we can expect the outcome of some of these contentious races to be tomorrow morning, when we'll get the outcome of many of the races. We're also going to talk about this recent New York Times poll that says 22% of Black voters are inclined to vote for Donald Trump in next year's presidential election. A lot of debate about whether that poll is accurate, whether it's not worth the paper that it is printed on. But we're going to talk to these strategists to get their take on what Democrats should be doing in this moment. Whether you believe that poll or not, it's pretty clear that voter enthusiasm, particularly amongst some segment of our voters, is not where we would like for it to be. So make sure you stick around for hour two. But before I bring on my guests, here's what I'm thinking about in real time. This case today before the Supreme Court on gun laws, something that you think should be pretty automatic. A lot of us didn't know what the Supreme Court would do with this case. And this is all about whether someone who has a domestic violence restraining order against them, should they be allowed to have access to a firearm? Doesn't that seem pretty common sense? Doesn't a common sense answer to that, I should say, seem pretty clear? In this country, if a judge has determined that you are violent, that you are likely to, commit some kind of violent act against your domestic partner, doesn't it just follow that you should not have access to or be allowed to purchase or to carry a gun? Well, with this Supreme Court and the decision that it made in 2022 in that New York gun case, where it basically said the Second Amendment has no limits, and that under the Second Amendment, when you look at the historical context of the Second Amendment, that there is a right to bear arms outside the home in pretty much any circumstance that you can imagine. So that's what the Supreme Court ruled last year. And gun control advocates have been worried for this last year in terms of what that would mean for other cases like this case involving a domestic violence restraining order. So we got what we think is going to be the court's thinking on this case, including some comments by conservative Justice Amy Coney Barrett, who was in the majority in that 2022 New York case. She, though, indicated that she agreed with the U.S. solicitor that the legislature in certain states, and all states really, can make judgments to disarm people consistently with the Second Amendment based on dangerousness. Again, doesn't that seem like common sense that states should be able to prevent dangerous people from having access to guns? During the oral argument today, Chief Justice Roberts asked a question of the attorney that was challenging the state's ability to take, guns away from folks who have restraining orders against them. And he asked a question about, he asked simply, should states have the ability to take guns from dangerous people? And the lawyer had the unmitigated gall to say, well, it depends on what dangerous means. Playing cutesy with the court. And Justice Roberts said, well, let's call dangerous someone who is likely to shoot someone with a gun. It's just really nerve-wracking. It's aggravating that we are having to fight about whether someone who has been deemed dangerous enough to have a restraining order issued against them, whether that person also should or should not have the right to have a gun or to carry a gun. So I don't often credit the Supreme Court with anything. I don't agree with 99.9% of what they have decided, but if they decide this case in a way that it appears that they will, that states can take guns away from dangerous people, I'll just have to say kudos to this conservative court. And maybe this is a wake-up call about, ruling in these very sweeping ways on these extremist conservative points, like in the case involving the New York decision that was issued in 2022. There are certain things that are common sense, and not giving a dangerous person a gun is one of those things. When we come forward, more of today's breaking and trending news right here on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Are you interested in catching up on all the latest entertainment news? Trending this only on The Raw Report with Robin Ayers.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
There's a new sheriff in town.
All right, I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, and starting September 18th, I couldn't be more thrilled than invite you to join us for the launch of A More Perfect Union, weekdays right here on KBLA Talk 1580, weekdays from 1 to 2 p.m. Pacific Time, that's 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern. A More Perfect Union promises to deliver national news of consequence, informed opinion, and analysis beyond the headlines. As KBLA Talk 1580's chief national political analyst, every day you can expect your daily dose of political news of consequence. If you're looking to be engaged, enlightened, and empowered to be a part of the solution to issues related to national politics, elections, identity, culture change, and social justice, A More Perfect Union was designed for you. This daily political affairs show will feature notable journalists, industry leaders, lawmakers, change makers, tastemakers, and ordinary people motivated to do their part to reach beyond today's divisions, to make sense out of news of the day, and offer us all a chance to build a more perfect union. Come on and join me.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Ray Richardson, your sports connection here at KBLA Talk 1580. Join me and my co-host Neil Scarborough every Saturday night at 7 for Out of Bounds, the show that brings some flavor to the world of sports for 60 minutes. We take you beyond the scores and press conferences. We give you our point of view, the way black folks see what's going down. You can join the conversation and give us your analysis at 1-800-920-1580. Out of Bounds every Saturday night at 7 on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
You like your style, though.
We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7.
We are back, and in this hour, Dr. Omekongo Dibinga and Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey are joining me to help us make sense of today's busy news day, very busy news day. Lots of folks going to the polls. We're going to talk in hour 2 about some of those critical elections, what they mean for both Democrats and Republicans, and what they mean for issues like abortion rights, marijuana, and Medicaid. But one of the biggest stories that continues to dominate the news is the Israeli attacks on Hamas and the collateral damage that's being done to now what Palestinians say are 10,000 plus Palestinians that have died. as a result of these attacks by the Israeli military. And the pressure, Dr. Nii, is on Arab nations, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, are saying, look, if you don't do something, America, to get Israel to back off, to, enter into some kind of ceasefire, we are about to have a major crisis on our hands in the Middle East. This is really testing all of the skill sets of Joe Biden. What do you make of this warning by Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Egypt, and their, comments, their pleas to American officials around getting Israel to halt its military assault?
Well, the stakes couldn't be higher. The stakes have been high. I mean, my goodness, 10,000 Palestinian deaths, mostly children. I can't scroll through my social media feed and not see images of and video of, dead children. That is untenable. We're also hearing calls not just for the ceasefire, but we're hearing calls for the return of hostages, right? And just right here in Washington, D.C., where I'm at today, just this weekend, there were thousands of people that took to the streets, really petitioning the White House, petitioning our government to, use every tool to call for a ceasefire. And that those activists included folks from the Jewish community. But folks from the Jewish community say, okay, yeah, but what about the hostages? And what's so interesting, Areva, is it almost seems as if the hostages have faded from the headlines. At least that's the point of view, of some folks that really sort of justify Israel's sort of full throttle attack on Hamas, where, of course, we know that there are innocent Palestinian people that are collateral damage of these attacks. And so this is untenable, and I think it's going to begin to show in terms of poll numbers and the popularity of the president if they don't act quickly, if they don't change their messaging. So they are clearly rallying not just Israel, but
Netanyahu is listening. And in fact, he seems like he is doubling down. Now they're using language about World War II and 9/11 and other acts of terrorism to justify their campaign against Hamas. And they have been pretty adamant saying that it would be imprudent to, cease fire at this point, because they said that would just give Hamas an opportunity to, further attack them. So what are we going to do, we being the United States, when we have our ally, Israel, who we're giving aid to, who we've embraced, we've thrown our arms around them in this big bear hug, but yet they're not listening to Joe Biden. Joe Biden is trying to tell them, look, we need you to respond to this pressure. And Netanyahu seems to be doubling down.
Yeah, before I answer that, one of the things I'm always talking about in my intercultural communication classes, coming to terms of definitions. And so many times when people talk about genocide, they talk about the intentional killing of a group and they leave it there. But the United Nations talks about killing members of a group, causing serious bodily harm or mental harm to members of the group, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, imposing measures intended to prevent birth within the group, forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. It doesn't have to be all five of those things. It could be just one of them, like inflicting mental harm on a group. And so we have to be mindful when people talk about, when reputable people, scholars and human rights experts talk about Israel's committing war crimes and acts of genocide, this isn't hypothetical stuff, right? And so we have to understand that when Netanyahu, as I said when we talked about this a few weeks ago, he's not the leader for Israel if people want peace. He is closer to Trump than he is to Biden. He is, look at the people he surrounded himself with. a white paper was released a concept paper was released by one of his cabinet members that talked about occupying Gaza again. Now, also be mindful of, just today or yesterday, Netanyahu said that after the war is done, they're going to provide the security apparatus for Gaza for an indefinite amount of time. CNN and MSNBC and other places went into parts of Gaza last week. They had to go accompanied by the IDF, and they had to submit their footage to the IDF for approval before they could disseminate it. Those are terms that occupiers do. So despite all of the language of this and that, this is what they're actually doing. And so Biden is definitely in a bind. But look, what he has to do at the end of the day is he has to bring it back home. Because as you mentioned in your intro, when we're talking about electoral politics, he can't afford to lose anything as a smidgen of support. We can talk about black folks in that poll later, but even with the Arab American community, it's over 200,000 plus in Michigan, and he won Michigan by 140,000 points. So 140,000 votes. And so really, at the end of the day, Biden, I feel like the problem with Biden is that he's been influential in Israel, but not fast enough. And, today, Netanyahu's talking about a pause and so on and so forth. Recently he's been talking about, moving people to certain areas, even though we know it's just as dangerous in the South. But Biden can't keep doing things with them privately and then getting on TV and saying there's no daylight between Israel and the United States. And we support them and so on and so forth, because folks who are hearing this at home as well as overseas, people aren't just saying it's Israel. They're saying it's Israel and the U.S. that's destroying Palestine, and he's got to clean that up.
That's a great point, Dr. Dibinga. So, Dr. Nee, you were at the White House, and a lot of the communication folks that work for Joe Biden. What are they saying? What are they feeling in this moment? Because Dr. Dibinga is right. At this point, Democrats in Biden's own party are split and are saying that we are in trouble. And if we continue to support Israel publicly, although there may be this quiet campaign behind the scenes, this is going to hurt Democrats, not just the president, but it could hurt down ballot Democrats as well.
Well, so I haven't had any conversations with administration officials specifically about this, but I can tell you right now, in the polls, there are 5 states, where if the election was held, Trump would win 5 critical battleground states. And so if that's not a red flashing light, I don't know what is a red flashing light, as the president is a year away from a reelection bid. There are a lot of folks that, aren't happy about so many different components of what's going on, whether you call it a genocide or not. People are not happy about that happening in the name of the United States. In addition, the over $100 billion that the president asked for in support of Israel, in support of Ukraine, in support, of humanitarian aid to the Palestinian people, among, other items. There are a number of people that feel like that's a bit gratuitous, right? And this is a president that used the Oval Office address, right? I mean, if you're trying to get the American people's attention, right, giving an address from the Oval Office is a big deal. And he used that platform to make the case for more money for Israel and Ukraine. And there are a lot of people that weren't feeling it and still aren't feeling it, right? And so the president, is, to Dr. Dibinga's point, the president is in a tough spot, and to have all this happening a year away from election, of course, a year is a lifetime, but, memories can also be very lasting.
So, Dr. Dibinga, let's play president for a day. I heard a journalist say, don't ask a person in a diner for a solution about these complex geopolitical issues. So you're obviously not the person in a diner. You are learned. You're a historian. You're a political scientist. What is the solution? Because if there appears to be any backing away from Israel in terms of financial support or just even, verbal support, it seems like the Jewish community in the U.S., a certain portion of that community is going to respond in such a negative way. We've seen from the law firms, from the investment banking firms, from all these big corporations, how they have responded to anyone that suggests almost any kind of sympathy for the Palestinians. So Israel's our key ally in the Middle East. So if we withdraw aid, if we withdraw support, where does that leave Joe Biden?
I mean, Joe Biden has to decide if he wants to lose potential funding sources or if he wants to lose votes, because all of these billionaires and different people who may lobby towards him, at the end of the day, they got one vote. And when it comes down to it. And so I feel like Biden, if he wants to talk about, he always talks about, we need to show, what does he say? Not the example of our power, but the power of our example. He really needs to be louder and preach stronger about the need for peace. And he needs to work with his donor base, who might be more inclined to be, more pro-Israel and the like, to let them know that in the long term, this is going to be beneficial for them, because all of us have sympathy for what happened on October 7th. But now videos are starting to come out showing Israeli soldiers parading around, Palestinian workers who they're beating up and singing songs and throwing stuff at them as they're tied up. And the more and more these videos start to come out, the bombing of the refugee camp and seeing Palestinians pull their kids out of rubble, sympathy for the Jewish community is going to start to erode. And that a terrible act on the 7th is going to be forgotten. And we don't want that. And so I feel like even people who are part of the larger lobby in the Jewish community, they have to understand that this continual campaign of violence is ultimately going to backfire on them. And he needs to speak up on that.
Yeah, I wish I could see the beginnings of that. But when you watch these Israelis, when you watch the Jewish members, even of the Biden administration, they still seem to be so entrenched in their position that this is the righteous thing for Israel to do. So it's going to be interesting to see, how this turns out. And now we know President Biden and former President Donald Trump are both so incredibly disliked by the American people. When we come forward, we're going to talk about who are we going to elect for president in 2024. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580.
Here comes the brand new flavor in your head.
Race, social justice, sports, politics, art, music, culture. We do it all on the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show. If you're not tuning in, then you are definitely missing out. It's the D.L. Hughley Afternoon Show, weekdays from 2 to 4 only on unapologetically progressive KBLA Talk 1580.
Like a brand new flavor in your head.
We boldly go where no man has gone before.
Boldly taking talk radio where it has never gone before. New vistas, new voices, new views, new visions, new victories. We're KBLA Talk 1580, and we're taking public media black.
Follow the leader.
KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader.
If you're not following KBLA Talk 1580 on all of our socials, then you're missing out. Download our app and find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and on the web at KBLA 1580.
That's right.
Again, you can find all of our socials at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
By the way, if you miss any of our weekday shows in real time, you can always catch up by checking out the podcasts of your favorite shows at your leisure. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Follow the leader. Oh my God. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a rest spot.
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in new merch, gift ideas, books, media, and more, log on to KBLA.store. Be sure to check out our KBLA team favorites at KBLA.store today. That's KBLA.store for all the official merch on your favorite talk radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
Bounce is back.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Are you interested in catching up on all the latest entertainment news, trending topics, and exciting interviews? I got you. Tune in to The Raw Report with Robin Ayers, Monday through Friday, 6 to 7 p.m. I'm your host, Robin Ayers. Join me every weekday with some of the best entertainment contributors in the business as we break down what's going on, who's got next, and what not to miss. Only on The Rob Report with Robin Ayers.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
There's a new sheriff in town.
All right, I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, and starting September 18th, I couldn't be more thrilled than invite you to join us for the launch of A More Perfect Union, weekdays right here on KBLA Talk 1580, weekdays from 1 to 2 p.m. Pacific Time, that's 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern. A More Perfect Union promises to deliver national news of consequence, informed opinion, and analysis beyond the headlines. As KBLA Talk 1580's chief national political analyst, every day you can expect your daily dose of political news of consequence. If you're looking to be engaged, enlightened, and empowered to be a part of the solution to issues related to national politics, elections, identity, culture change, and social justice, A More Perfect Union was designed for you. This daily political affairs show will feature notable journalists, industry leaders, lawmakers, change makers, tastemakers, and ordinary people motivated to do their part to reach beyond today's divisions, to make sense out of news of the day, and offer us all a chance to build a more perfect union. Come on and join me.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about. We've got a lot to talk about.
Hi, I'm Ray Richardson, your sports connection here at KBLA Talk 1580. Join me and my co-host Neil Scarborough every Saturday night at 7 for Out of Bounds, the show that brings some flavor to the world of sports for 60 minutes. We take you beyond the scores and press conferences. We give you our point of view, the way black folks see what's going down. You can join the conversation and give us your analysis at 1-800-920-1580. Out of Bounds every Saturday night at 7 on KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
You like your style, though.
We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. We've got a lot to talk about.
Race, culture wars, political turf battles, criminal justice and injustice, the courts. These are the conversations you won't hear elsewhere. My guests are leading journalists, celebrities, and sports figures, elected leaders, and influencers. They aren't afraid to get into it and say the quiet part out loud. With Areva Martin in real time, your commute just became the most engaging part of your day. Tune in weekdays from 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. or find us on YouTube. Areva Martin in real time, when you want it straight, no chaser.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
We are back with Dr. Omekongo Dibinga and Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, and we don't have a solution for the Israeli-Hamas conflict. It is so incredibly complex, and it is bleeding over, obviously, into Middle East politics, and we see Middle Eastern countries now also calling for some kind of ceasefire. And on the domestic front, Dr. Nee, both Joe Biden and Donald Trump are two of the most unpopular presidents that we have seen in recent history. And folks are saying, we don't want to vote for either one of them. Trump has made ridiculous statements about banning Muslims and having loyalty tests for Palestinians. And folks are mad at Joe Biden because they feel like he should be putting more pressure on Israel to stop what they call the slaughter of Palestinians. So we are a year off from a really, really important presidential election. They all were important, but this one seems more important than most. Where are voters going?
Well, I think time will tell where voters ultimately go. Just to give folks a little bit of history, and White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre shared this earlier today during the press briefing, reminding folks, that way back in 2011, when President Obama was running for re-election, the polls show that Romney was in the lead. Well, the rest is history. When there was talk about this red wave, taking over Washington in the midterms in 2022, it never really materialized, right? And so the White House is conscious of what these polls are telegraphing, but they're not reading too much into them. Time will tell whether or not, that was wise or not. But there's a poll that was released, a CNN poll that was released recently that showed that Black men are even on Trump versus Biden. Support in this poll is significantly weaker now among several groups that he previously won by wide margins. And so, I think while you can't read too much in the polls, I think there are multiple data points that are looking a lot like red flashing lights. It's saying that the president and vice president have some work to do. They have an enviable legislative record in terms of all the promises they made in 2020. But even at their own admission, they still need to finish the job. And so much of finishing the job is on issues that are really important to Black folks, whether we're talking about, the Justice and Policing Act or voting rights, a number of issues that, might I add, are also on the other side of the filibuster, right? And so I don't think we've been hearing enough from Democrats, particularly Democrats running for Senate, as to where do you stand on the filibuster? And if we don't get folks on the record, if we don't get this president on the record, really being clear with us about what's going to be different in a second Biden-Harris term, then I think folks are going to shrug their shoulders, and we're going to be wringing our hands on Election Day 2024.
Yeah, I think you're right, Dr. Nee, but Jared Hill, president of National Association of Black Journalists, was on the show yesterday, and I think he said something really profound about this election. These are two different elections, and you just talked about the incredible record of Harris and Biden, and no doubt about that. At every point, they have performed as well as any president and vice president can. They are running on that record. Donald Trump, though, Dr. Dibinga, is running on revenge. Destroying the legal system, destroying the FBI, making a list, or so-called his lackeys are making a list of people that he should go after. So when I hear this number about Black voters, whether it's Black men or Black women saying they're supporting Donald Trump, I'm asking the question, what are they supporting? Because there is no platform that Donald Trump is advancing other than let me undo these systems that I think have wronged me. He's not talking about how he's going to help Black residents, Black middle class folks. In fact, you look at the UAW strike, it was Biden that went to the picket line. Donald Trump called the UAW workers suckers, saying you guys are being, really misled by this leadership. This leadership, by the way, that got them a 25% pay increase. He went to a non-union shop to give a speech when Joe Biden has been supporting working class folks, many of whom are Black. So it's like it's two different elections going on. Joe Biden running on his record, running on things like the economy, and Donald Trump running on being a victim, hating everything about America and wanting to blow up America. So what is attractive to Black voters about that which Donald Trump is promoting?
Well, on some levels, with some members of our community, they look at Trump as being better with messaging. Some people actually believe the things that he says that he's done, like he's done more for HBCUs than any other president, for example. Some people take that at face value, and that's part of Biden's problem. Biden has done so much financially for HBCUs, multiple times more than Trump, but the messaging isn't there. You also don't have a lot of celebrities out there in the black celebrity space speaking up in support of Biden. But you have some of these younger rappers or Sexy Red or some of these other folks, talking about, I messed with Trump, he got me those checks, which isn't true because the COVID relief checks were an act of Congress. But again, people don't know that. People are getting mad at Representative Jasmine Crockett for basically saying that, many of us, not just black people, but in general, are misinformed because we don't understand civics. And so they still see him as a celebrity, kind of larger than life figure. He gets the HBCU presidents together, takes a photo, shops that photo out, and some of us are just like, oh, that's great. And then he can strategically post himself with certain celebrities. Kanye West is still popular among some black people, Kim Kardashian and so on and so forth. So that's really what it comes down to. I think that, black people who are embedded in politics and know what's going on, they know what's up, they know the deal, but those aren't the people that we need to worry about. It's not about the percentage of the black vote that Biden gets, it's about the percentage of black voters that actually come out, right? So whatever number comes out, he's gonna get the larger number, but if it's a small percentage, Trump's not going for 50+1. He's just trying to shrink Biden's base here and there, here and there and there, so his base that is not grown at all can do what it did for him in 2016.
No, good point. And I want to ask you, Dr. Nee, what do you think about what Jared said, which basically said, Trump voting for Trump is voting to maintain white supremacy, the status quo. It's not a vote to advance the middle class in terms of jobs or the economy or home ownership or things that you think black folks care about. But for some reason, as Dr. Dibinga has said, a lot of black voters, and we don't want to overstate this, but there are some black voters, obviously, if you believe those polls, that have convinced themselves that Donald Trump, without a platform, is going to be better for them than Joe Biden. And that's the dilemma that we face going into 2024. When we come forward, I want to talk about how do we counter that narrative? Because we're not talking policy to policy, we're talking policy to revenge, which is what Donald Trump says he's going to get if he is president in 2024. Stay with us, KBLA Talk 1580.
We boldly go where no man has gone before.
Boldly taking talk radio where it has never gone before. New vistas, new voices, new views, new visions, new victories. We're KBLA Talk 1580. And we're taking public media black.
Follow the leader. KBLA Talk 1580. Follow the leader. If you're not following KBLA Talk 1580 on all of our socials, then you're missing out. Download our app and find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and on the web at KBLA 1580.
That's right.
Again, you can find all of our socials at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
By the way, if you miss any of our weekday shows in real time, you can always catch up by checking out the podcasts of your favorite shows at your leisure. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Got your black.
Keep following the leader.
Oh my God.
Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Gotta stay fresh, my house shot with a rest bar, shot with a rest bar, shot with a rest bar.
Have you visited us online for the grand opening of KBLA.store? For the best in new merch, gift ideas, books, media, and more, log on to KBLA.store. Be sure to check out our KBLA team favorites at KBLA.store today. That's KBLA.store for all the official merch on your favorite talk radio station, KBLA Talk 1580.
The bounce is back.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Are you interested in catching up on all the latest entertainment news, trending topics, and exciting interviews? I got you. Tune in to The Raw Report with Robin Ayers, Monday through Friday, 6 to 7 p.m. I'm your host, Robin Ayers. Join me every weekday with some of the best entertainment contributors in the business as we break down what's going on, who's got next, and what not to miss. Only on The Raw Report with Robin Ayers.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black.
There's a new sheriff in town.
All right, I'm Dr. Nii-Quartelai Quartey, and starting September 18th, I couldn't be more thrilled than invite you to join us for the launch of A More Perfect Union, weekdays right here on KBLA Talk 1580, weekdays from 1 to 2 p.m. Pacific Time, that's 4 to 5 p.m. Eastern. A More Perfect Union promises to deliver national news of consequence, informed opinion, and analysis beyond the headlines. As KBLA Talk 1580's chief national political analyst, every day you can expect your daily dose of political news of consequence. If you're looking to be engaged, enlightened, and empowered to be a part of the solution to issues related to national politics, elections, identity, culture change, and social justice, A More Perfect Union was designed for you. This daily political affairs show will feature notable journalists, industry leaders, lawmakers, change makers, tastemakers, and ordinary.
All right, Dr. Nee, you have 2 points for us in response to Jared Hill's assessment of the 2024 election. Give it to us.
Yeah, I think my one overarching point, I think we all agree this election shouldn't be this close. The fact that Donald Trump, 91 indictments, is this close to clinching the GOP nomination without even trying. Think about that. Without even trying. He hasn't hit the debate stage once, and he's still leading in the polls. That says a lot about Republican voters. It says a lot about the ability of somebody who is engaged in criminal conduct, right, and alleged criminal conduct, being able to occupy the highest office of the land. But I think there are 2 variables that we need to pay attention to. One, I think the entertainment value that folks bring to the campaign trail. And 2, the power of misinformation, not just misinformation campaigns, but misinformation machines, right? Mm-hmm. And by that, I mean the ability for people to create a surround sound effect that allows for their universe of voters and potential voters to actually believe stuff that may not be true, that likely is not true. And so I think those are 2 factors that I think are going to make this election very different from any other one that we've seen in recent history. I mean, think about how much content, creative content, that we are enveloped by each and every day on so many different devices, on our computers, on our iPhones or Androids. We're surrounded by content every day. And so that's my big worry, is that folks are going to engage with Trump as if they're watching the bonus episode of The Apprentice, and they're going to have a rude awakening when they find that entertainment value that might have been amusing on the campaign trail ushers in a world of hurt if he occupies the Oval Office again.
Well, if it is a contest about entertainment, we know Joe Biden and Kamala Harris lose hands down, because nobody can out-entertain and perform Donald Trump. We saw that on the witness stand yesterday in that civil trial in New York, where he yelled at the judge, he attacked the judge, he attacked the attorney general, he attacked the judicial system, the legal system, and he got away with it. Had that been African-American witness sitting there, defendant, Barack Obama, Kamala Harris, they'd be sitting in a jail cell today. I've been a lawyer for a long time, been in a lot of courtrooms. I've never, ever seen a judge tell a witness on a witness stand, you can attack me. It's okay, but answer the question. Oh, no. That's not how it works in the law business. If you yell at a judge, raise your voice, there is a big person there called a bailiff that is typically a sheriff, and he has a gun, he or she, they have a gun, they have handcuffs, and literally a judge has the power to have you removed from the courtroom and put in a holding cell. And that is what typically happens when you get belligerent and so disrespectful with the court. But not so for Donald Trump. He's allowed to do things that none of us are capable of doing or allowed to do in this country. So we got to call it what it is, this white privilege. And I think we've got to talk more about that, Dr. Dibinga, in this election, because, whether it's mainstream media, we're back to 24/7 coverage of Donald Trump. These candidates that are going to be debating 5 Republicans tomorrow night, they might get, 10 million viewers or 8 million viewers.
Mm-hmm.
But have we seen them since the last debate? I don't think we've seen them, have we?
Nope.
I mean, they might be in the witness protection program. Who knows?
They're just debating themselves for no real reason. Some of them, Nikki Haley, intelligent people, good resumes. I don't agree with any of them, but it's almost like pointless for them to have these debates. So how do we call that out, Dr. Dibinga? We got to call out, the truth here. The truth hurts, as you said. This congresswoman is talking the truth, and people get upset with her. But Chris Christie, he was booed at this recent, Republican gathering because he was telling the truth. People don't want to hear the truth, but somebody's got to tell the American people the truth.
And that's why platforms like this are so important, to have these real conversations. Look, as Les Moonves, formerly of CBS, said, Trump may be bad for America, but he's great for CBS. He's great for ratings. I believe that even if Trump had no trials going on and wasn't indicted at all, these media outlets will still find ways to keep him in the news because he is so entertaining to them and a ratings grab for them. But it's not good for the country. And we need to continually call out these mainstream, quote unquote, media sources as well, that are continually giving him or people like him a platform, whether it's people like him, whether it's these members of Congress, Marjorie Taylor Greene and the like. They continually platform them in ways that are not helpful for the country, but are helping them become stars. And so really, I really thought stupidly that the media was going to be a little bit more responsible this time around, but they literally can't help themselves. And going to what Dr. Nee was saying, that there's a misinformation machine, and not only a misinformation machine, a disinformation machine, with Fox and so on. And then he was talking about everything with the tech, throwing AI in there, and people can just create generated things. And so it's going to get worse. And I was hoping our media systems would be part of the education format or the education process to better help voters and people come along with this. But they are part of the problem we have to fight as well, because Trump is going to stay in the news more than Biden. Oftentimes, I find myself forgetting, who's the president sometimes when I go through the news cycles, right? And, they're not going to do better. It's only going to get worse. And that's why this platform, KBLA, and what we're doing is more important now more than ever.
Yeah, it's really scary. You're right. I mean, you think about the air time that Joe Biden, Kamala Harris get compared to Donald Trump.
I saw no coverage of Kamala Harris's HBCU tour.
Oh, no, you had to get it on social media. Mm-hmm. And that's why I'm glad you brought that up, because that poll, Dr. Nee, that says 22% of Blacks might vote for Donald Trump. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking about those lines of Black students at those HBCUs when Kamala Harris was on campus. Now, were they in that poll of the 22%? Who were these Black people that were polled? Because we didn't see it on national television, but if you went to your social media or you get the newsletter from the White House, that she had a super, super successful HBCU college tour. So, are those Black folks in this poll, you think?
Well, probably not. A lot of these polling firms are calling folks on landlines. And we know that, for example, a lot of young people don't have a landline. If you were to ask me, and I'm almost 40, if you were to ask me what my home phone number is, I'd have to look it up, because I mainly use my cell phone, as a lot of younger people do. But, I think it's also important to note, that you're right. I don't think the president, vice president get the coverage that they should as folks that are the current occupants of the White House. And so it's this sort of weird thing where in some ways you wonder, has the bully pulpit of the presidency, has it been diminished, or are, media outlets, just, heavy on the Trump stuff and the toxic political coverage. Even the vice president's work on artificial intelligence. That was something that Joe Biden tasked her to do in the summer. There was a big summit just last week right here in Washington, D.C. And then afterwards, she went to London to represent the country at a global summit on AI, which is going to be really important to the future of our economy, in terms of our civil and human rights, right? And hardly any coverage about it.
Yep.
It's political theater. It's why certain reality shows are so popular. People like watching a train wreck And we saw some of these news outlets lost hundreds of millions of dollars after Donald Trump was no longer in office. And now they see it as an opportunity to regain those hundreds of millions of dollars. And they have this runway in which to do it, which is this year leading up to the campaign. And speaking of those polls, somehow I got on the list for the new speaker, Mike Johnson. So I get these very, very slanted, biased polls, questions in my email. And we have to imagine that these people they're calling, Dr. Nee, on the landlines, the questions are asked in such a way that people answer them. And then all of a sudden that becomes, this poll that says 22% of Black folks are going to vote for Donald Trump. Like one of the questions that I got in my email was, do you support closed borders? That seems innocuous enough, right? Except you know where they're going with that. Like the next question is, do you agree that Joe Biden, has let the borders be completely open? So, the questions are so biased and so slanted to get to the response that some of these pollsters are looking for, which is why you can't have a lot of confidence in the polls. But I think we all are rightfully concerned about the media outlets and how people are getting their news. And we're going to need a whole lot in the Democratic Party to combat what is coming and what has been already heaped on us. Real quickly, Dr. Dibinga, other than, getting the word out through alternative programming, what do you recommend the Dems do at this point?
They got to support local organizations on the ground, organizations like Black Voters Matter, organizations that are dealing with abortion rights and the like. They have to, and the DNC has been kind of absent on some of these levels, but these local organizations, they've been getting results. And so that's where people need to really channel the energy. If all the elections going on tonight, whether there's a question relating to abortion or people are voting for people based on their abortion platform, that's a big deal. And so we have to stop focusing on press and media releases and channel that energy into the ground, that people can do real work, talking to those people in those communities about what Trump is actually doing, what Youngkin is actually doing, what DeSantis is actually doing, and get that local support and connect that with the national. That's where they have to go. They have to go grassroots. They have to reinvent the ground game if they want to have success in 2024.
I think you are right. That's going to be our only hope, is that we all have to talk to our neighbors, our friends, our coworkers, our colleagues. We're going to get folks to the polls, and we've got to give them the real, because they are not going to get it watching a lot of these traditional outlets. All right, we are out of time. This is so concerning. We got to have this conversation again. I got to have both of you back. Obviously, we're going to watch what happens with these elections tonight. In hour 2, we're going to be tracking these election results. So stay with us when we come forward. More of today's news right here on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
Race, culture wars, political turf battles, criminal justice and injustice, the courts. These are the conversations you won't hear elsewhere. My guests are leading journalists, celebrities and sports figures, elected leaders and influencers. They aren't afraid to get into it and say the quiet part out loud. With Areva Martin in real time, your commute just became the most engaging part of your day. Tune in weekdays